All right, welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. As we were going live, we were just updating our space weather stats, and we were unsettled at a KP4 less than an hour ago. Now we are elevated to a 6. That means we are now in a G2 geomagnetic storm for at this moment. And here's the deal. There was a M2 class solar flare, but it was on the far side. So it really wasn't Earth facing. It shouldn't have any impact because it just happened yesterday, I believe. But right now, as we speak, as we went live, we are now in a G2 geomagnetic storm. I'm going to turn that up. Sorry about that. Earlier, like I said, about an hour before I started the show, I was looking at space weather stats. Our solar winds are at 426.5 at the time. That's also been updated to now 459.2. So what's interesting here is this is from a coronal hole apparently a couple days ago, but they're not really saying anything about this was from a CIR or magnetic filament or solar flare. It's just one of these surprise things. And the reason why I say that is because usually when we have a G2 geomagnetic storm, we've got solar wind streams somewhere around 650 kilometers-ish, give or take a few kilometers. So really crazy that it just kind of pops up without the solar wind being high with it. So we have a lot of highly charged particles that are bombarding our atmosphere as we speak, and lots of geomagnetic activity. This goes along with what I announced earlier today, looking at this Earth-facing coronal hole that we see right now. I do expect a strong 6.5 to 7.2 earthquake within the next few days. And if anything, we had a magnetic filament release at the southern part of our star here. As you see the little explosion next to the rolling GSM logo. That's a pretty big size. But again, that just happened. So for us to be in a G2 geomagnetic storm, we'd have to learn more about this particular explosion here, what class this was. I'm sure I'll be able to find it here as we go to the grandsolarminimum.com. But wow, lots already happening. Like I said, just going on the air, we are at a KP4. Here we are at a KP6. That's a G2 geomagnetic storm. Solar winds are starting to increase, but again, these are not the kind of level solar winds we would see for this kind of storm. We do have a sunspot number of 111. Crazy stuff, guys. We've got a solar storm going on right now. We've got 5 active regions. Sunspot number 111. That's right, 111. Once again, a lot of sunspots on our star. And it does appear in the northeastern limb, we are witnessing the development of more possible a big sunspot. I'll get to that here just in a second as well. Cosmic radiation dosage rates are also at 8.3. We are starting to see these slowly decline, but I do mean slowly. We have been above 5% dosage rates on cosmic radiation now for around 4 to 5 years straight. And I say that because in the past, it never lasted that long at 5%. Here we are peaking out at 11.7, averaging about 8.5 right now as far as cosmic radiation dosage rates, I'd say over the past 6 weeks. Heading towards a maximum, you would expect, and especially with all of this activity flare-up, you would think that this is speeding up towards the maximum, and we would see less cosmic radiation dosage into our atmosphere because, you're supposed to see some strengthening. But I think this is what Lee Wilbarger was trying to tell me about the weak magnetosphere will continue to weaken to, of course, a level where we haven't seen in 400 years. And even during a maximum, that magnetic shield is not going to protect like a normal maximum would protect. In other words, weaker output from the sun, weaker strength of magnetic field. And you can pretty much put the rest together from there. Let's go ahead and go to thegrandsolarminimum.com to our space weather section. And first we'll check on some solar terrestrial information, checking out where we are in the orbit right now around the sun. Earth is on the weak side of the sun, so we are very vulnerable for solar flares, solar wind right now because of how weak our magnetic field actually is. And today is a huge right now what we're witnessing is a weak magnetic field allowing this solar storm at a G2 without very strong solar winds. So interesting stuff, guys. Let's go ahead and take a look at the far side of the sun, what we've got coming in. Again, we've got a very active sun right now. No doubt about that. We are definitely coming out of the minimum cycle, heading into a maximum. Well, a lot of people are saying that we are ahead of schedule. Well, just remember this. Just because we're ahead of schedule doesn't mean it's going to be longer or it's going to be more sunspots. The quicker you get to the peak activity, the faster we get to the decline as well. So that means the minimum could start earlier. So we're looking at this right here is what gave us the M2 flare. And then we have another large region right behind it. So, we've got 5 active regions. This one is piercing the eastern limb right now as we speak. We will see if this is another large sunspot. Does that number go to 134? Remember, we peaked at 144 or 141 the other day, and a lot of people were predicting 146, 147 is the number for the peak for the sunspot. So everyone's now pressing that. Well, it's already gotten to 141, so we're already outperforming. Well, yes, but still, we will continue to monitor this. And even if it is a little bit stronger, let's say we're at 166 or 167. Mind you, grand solar minimum is a period of solar cycles that produces lower than average output. Therefore, solar cycle 24 has to be included in this grand solar minimum, as we have seen the weakest cycle in the last 150 years just now with solar cycle 24. So, again, folks, yes, we may be rising in activity. Yes, we may be pulling out of the minimum, but if we arrive to the peak sooner than expected, that doesn't mean a longer duration of, active sun. This just means also the sooner we get to the next minimum. But no one has the real answers. We just have to continue and monitor this and take the work that we have in front of us and make the best reports that we can. Right now, a lot of things that we are seeing is exactly what we were told was going to happen from day one when I started this channel. So none of this stuff is surprising or anything like that. This is just regular space weather that happens during this part of a cycle. How low it's going to get is going to be what's going to be talked about the most. But still interesting times because, like I said, Earth's magnetic field is weak. We are very vulnerable right now to strong solar flares. So today, we had that M2, right? And I'll just go to this first. High-level eruption at Hunga, Tonga, Hunga Hayapaya, I believe that's how you say it. Maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure. Tsunami warning was issued. Now, the reason why this makes the news tonight, well, another high-level eruption started at the volcano around 1520 UTC, January 13th. A plume of gas and ash rose rapidly to an estimated height of around 55,000 feet. That was at 1742. Now, what is significant about 55,000 feet? Anyone? Anyone want to answer that? That's right. When you get to 55,000 feet, that's a strato-type volcano, and that affects regional climate in the sense of cooling. We have more cloud nucleation, but 55,000 feet, now you're talking about this is going to block the sun. So you have less TSI, less energy hitting the asphalt, less warm-up. But with all the particles in the atmosphere from the volcano ash and the cosmic radiation that we have, the overabundance, and you mix in a little water vapor, you can see heavy rains and heavy snows after these volcanic eruptions as well. We know the forest fires can create their own weather, so why can't volcanoes? We see it during the eruptions, right? You see lightning bolts flying out of it. That's mainly because of the plasma charge from volcanoes. But this is a big deal today, reporting on this, and now seeing this large coronal hole that I think we are about 48 hours, 72 hours away from a 6.5 and a 7.2 earthquake, probably in the usual suspect areas along PNG or near the Philippines, of course. But again, I can't really pinpoint these predictions. I just look at the sun and I see the conditions, and I saw the KP before this storm was very low at a 1 today, as we had Earth-facing coronal hole, and now we have jumped up to a 6 at a G2. Volcanic eruptions have been correlated with low solar activity. So you're saying, well, Jake, why is the volcanoes going up if we've got 111 on the sunspots and of course no solar wind to cause this storm or this volcanic eruptions? And the answer is the higher level of cosmic radiation in the atmosphere that continues to bombard Earth. Again, we shouldn't be at these levels. This is pretty high for this part of a solar cycle. So my only explanation for why we still see big volcanic eruptions before a solar flare or before solar wind coming from a coronal hole is the overabundance of cosmic radiation. And remember, these things go to the core of Earth, heating it up from the core. Of course, that means magma as well. So again, we usually don't have cosmic radiation rates this high. And the reason why we do is because of, that's right, weaker magnetosphere, not protecting as good as it usually has, say as it did back in the 70s. 22 people freeze to death after unprecedented snowstorm traps thousands of cars in Marine, Pakistan. Now, this happened on January 8th. This is old news. We haven't been on the air for a while, but I wanted to point this out because it's not about the fear factor here, and sorry for the brawl ad here, but it is awareness of how fast things can go south quickly in the cold. At least 22 people, including 9 children, have died of hypothermia overnight Saturday, January 8th, 2022, after heavy snow trapped thousands of vehicles in Pakistan's mountain resort of the Murray. The resort, located about 28 miles north of the capital, recorded more than 4 feet of snow overnight, and more than 23,000 cars were evacuated from the area on Friday. Guys, this is insane. That is a huge storm. And I like to look up the history for this region on snowfall. Is this a common thing? This is a mountain resort. This is probably where people ski. This is where they vacation for that type of thing, I'm sure. But what is the usual snowfall for this time of years? And guys, it wasn't a matter of what's the average yearly snowfall here. It is, this is in quotes now, this person saying it was not snow, and not even heavy snow. It was unprecedented, with 4 to 5 feet in a few hours. A few hours. And here we go, another "I never saw this in my life" sentence. I never saw such a huge snowstorm in my life. There were strong winds, uprooted trees, avalanche. People were terrified, each having his or own account of suffering. 4 or 5 feet of snow in just a few hours. Cars are buried. Mari's seen this type of snow before, living in Buffalo when they had the 8 feet back in 2014. This is not too far from what it looked like. Mari's car was buried to the top. So, but 23,000 people were evacuated, and still 22 people died. I worked at a place in Buffalo during that storm when we got the 7 to 8 feet of snow in Buffalo. The company I had worked for had lost an employee, and the same thing happened. He got stuck on the road 4 blocks away from work, waiting for someone to come get him. The snow got deep so fast. Now, their excuse is that it's lake effect snow up there. Buffalo gets it all the time. But it fell so fast that within a matter of hours, he was trapped. And overnight, unfortunately, he had passed away from hypothermia. The point I'm trying to make here, folks, is that the cold and the extreme heat are nothing to play with. And it's very, very important to be aware of the weather nowadays. I don't care who wants to hijack it and weaponize it and make it talk about global warming. They can do what they want. We're going to be reporting the truth about this situation and how it will continue to get worse. That's what I'm trying to stress, is that if you think this is bad now, you wait until 2026 through 2032 when we really start seeing the lowest of the solar activity. Even into the 2040s, they're predicting record low solar activity. And of course, that is going to be the heart of the grand solar minimum that lines up almost exactly from the Maunder minimum, which would make it a grand cycle. This upcoming grand solar minimum is considered a grand cycle. A grand cycle is every 350 to 415 years. The last grand cycle was the Maunder minimum. Right now, things look like it's going to be equal to that, if not worse, folks. Heads up. And why are we bringing up grand solar minimums and when they start and when they happen and this and that? Well, it's because of articles like this, folks. China is stockpiling food at a historically high levels. Now, we're dealing with snowfalls that come down in feet in just a few hours. People getting trapped. We already are facing supplies issues in grocery stores. You see it on the grocery shelves. I know my wife does all the shopping, and it's frustrating to go to the store when you're used to finding everything you need. And now you're starting to see these shortages show up in everyday things that we all use. The Chinese know about the grand solar minimum, folks. The Chinese know all about the grand solar minimum because they have lost many dynasties to famine during grand solar minimums. So, China stockpiling food at historically high levels, duh, and now has more than half of the world's maize and other grades. Did you hear that? China has more than half of the world's maize and other grains for China. Now, folks, half the world. That's 3.5, 4 billion people. China has a population of 1.3 billion people. Historically high level is not even explaining how much food the Chinese are stocking right now. This to me, and Mari is the one that brought this article to me today, this is one of the biggest red flags in this entire discussion of grand solar minimum. The fact that we're seeing inflation already, the fact that stock market is falling now, retail sales are dropping, a little stunt they pulled with hiring more dock workers during Christmas and then laid them off, and now we're back to the supply issues once again, which that move is backfiring as we speak. And all this talk about this Green New Deal and the Build Back Better stuff, meanwhile, China is laughing, thinking, wow, yeah, there's a reason why we don't sign on to that Paris Treaty climate. We're not contributing to your slush fund of money that you're collecting from these countries for so-called violating climate treaty policies. So what does China do? Collecting half of the world's maize and other grains? Half of the world? And just their 30% of the population, 20, 25%? No, they're ready. They're getting ready. They know what's coming, folks. Our farmers here in the States are now facing a problem with finding chemicals to fertilize their fields with. Our farmers are not getting what they need to start the next grow season on time. Mari also told me that there's all kinds of programs going on right now where they're trying to make alternatives for these chemicals to make it work. But is that really the best option? Is that safe for our foods? Somebody shared a meme online today talking about for 5,000 years people ate bread. Now all of a sudden in the last decade we see millions of people allergic to gluten. And I thought about that for a minute. Like, yeah, what is up with that? Like everybody's allergic to bread now. They can't have bread. Well, maybe that's true, and maybe that's a real allergy. But you ever think about how we got to that point? Maybe it was a pharmaceutical. Maybe it was an organ that you had removed from your body that didn't need to be removed. But it is weird how a product that has fed millions, if not billions and trillions of people for so many years, in the last decade, have probably seen more gluten allergies than ever before in the history of man. So it's either we are evolving as humans because of the cosmic radiation increase. It's interesting they said the last decade. Is it because we've seen cosmic radiation increase and that is changing the way certain things affect our bodies? It's possible, guys. This is all about energy. So again, when you see articles like this and you watch channels like us, know that this is a red flag. This is China telling the world without telling the world that we are ready for the next famine. We are ready. Look, they're hoarding. Their people are calling it hoarding key commodities. According to U.S. Agricultural, China will hold 69% of the world's corn reserves, 60% of its rice. And by the way, I heard there was a rice situation as far as shortage and bad crops. So that's even going to be even worse. Half of the wheat by mid-22. Folks, I don't want to stir anything, but I do remember a certain president who made a deal with China to sell more of our agriculture to China. Now, yes, that's good for us. That's good for us. Good for the country. Money in our farmers' pockets. That's what I want. But if they're hoarding the food and they're buying it all up, are we shortchanging ourselves now? I know the deal sounded like a great idea in the first place for business, but now it makes you worry. China is maintaining its food stockpiles at a historically high level. That's just crazy. Our weak stockpiles can meet the demand for 1.5 years. There is no problem whatsoever about the supply of food. And look, it's almost like he's gloating. There's no supply foods. Don't worry. The projections represent increases of around 20% points over the past 10 years, and the data clearly shows that China continues to hoard grain. So if they're at this point of the grand solar minimum, historically stockpiling food, and they have enough to get by for 1.5 years, that's a bold statement, folks. That's a bold statement. So what happens in another 5 years before the you-know-what really hits the fan? Are they going to have 5 years, 10 years worth of food by then? Maybe. 1.5 years isn't going to do it, folks. This grand solar minimum just doesn't, that's it. No. This is a long duration event. We're going to continue to see these big weather events, volcano eruptions that lead to climate change, and they do. Just look up Mount Tambora, 1815, the eruption of a 122,000-foot ash plume that caused the year without a summer in the Northeast in 1816. Yes, that volcano changed the climate. A big eruption like that is a VEI 7 or 8. That is possible. I'm sorry, that was actually a 6, I think. Either way, that is possible during grand solar minimums. And yes, that was in the Dalton minimum when that one happened. So we weren't even in the grand cycle of a grand solar minimum and still had a strong volcano that changed for 1 year at least, the year without a summer in the Northeast in 1816. But again, this is a red flag. Start paying attention out there. If you had any doubts or skepticism about solar cycles and its effect on climate, again, why is China hoarding all of this food? They know what's coming. They know the crop failure will continue. I also want to point out really quick, there's an article on what's up with that. Nearly 140 scientific papers that detail minuscule CO2 has on the Earth's temperature. Shown this because if you have friends who try to say you're just a denier and you don't have any scientific proof, here is 135 papers right here in this link for these particular papers that show that it has minimal effect on temperature. We don't make this stuff up, and that's what I don't understand. That's what frustrates everybody in this community, is that we only post facts. We only post evidence that comes straight from peer-reviewed documentations and real scientific journals. And yet somehow fact checkers call us false and harmful content. The only thing that's harmful about the content is what it's going to do to all these Green New Deal policymakers' wallets. Information like us will halt that. And the more people get this out, the more can open their eyes and realize that people do not cause climate change. We are not that big, folks. I'm sorry to say that. We are not that big. A volcano that blows up 55,000 feet of ash, you bet that's going to have something to do with it. And what started that eruption in the volcano in the first place? More than likely, something related to the sun. There is the correlation of that. Work is being done all over to prove it. John Casey and his research team had proved it with their work. In fact, Casey thinks we're going to see a really big volcanic eruption, VEI 8, by 2037. And that's, like I said, that's right around the really deep, gritty part of this grand solar minimum. So his timeline might be correct. And we got a big one coming here in the Northeast, folks. I always talk about other areas about getting snow, but finally, where Mari and I live, we are getting snow. And I say finally because you know what? It's good for the wells out here. You know, we haven't had that much snow yet. We had a lot of ice and a lot of cold weather here in the Northeast, but not a lot of snow. So this is kind of a welcome snow. They're calling for about 8 to 12 inches here where we live. That's really not a lot. Last year, around Mari's birthday, we saw 36 inches of snow in just 24 to 48 hours. So, yeah, that was a big deal. 36 inches, folks. Here we have a storm that's going to begin Sunday. Actually, right now, current weather here in upstate New York, we are experiencing some very high winds. In fact, right before we went live, I was worried that maybe the power would go out, how bad the trees are kind of swaying around. And to top it off, there's a lot of ice on the limbs. We've just had some really frigid weather here for the last several days, and it's going to get worse tonight. But here's when this storm is going to do. The thinking right now, we're going to see ice all along the I-95 corridor, okay, in the usual parts, but more or less snow for all of New York, except for the southern regions. You'll see more sleet and freezing rain. But the central capital region, Syracuse, western New York, watch out. Not only do you have to worry about lake effect possibly entering this situation, but you are going to be getting the heaviest of the snowfall for the most part, from what I'm seeing on this radar, and I'll go over it here in a minute. It shows you guys are going to get around 12 to 18 inches from Buffalo all the way through the South Towns to Williamsville, down into Erie, PA. You could see 18 inches plus, especially Erie, Buffalo, and the South Towns. Parts of central New York and the Finger Lakes could expect also 12 to 18 inches of snow. Parts of the border of New Hampshire and Vermont into Maine also expecting a lot. And another area that more likely is the mountainous regions here of Tennessee and Virginia. But we're going to see snow again in the south. And Roy Spencer showed us some beautiful pictures of the snowfall that he got about 5 inches in his neck of the woods in Alabama. And folks, 5 inches of snow is a big deal down there. Just like in Tennessee right now, we're seeing snowstorm after snowstorm. And I can tell you, I remember I was in Tennessee for a year, Middle Tennessee, and when it snowed about a quarter inch, school was canceled. They don't have salt trucks. They're not prepared to deal with this kind of weather. So when you see 5 to 8 inches falling in Nashville, it's more like 3 feet of snow falling in Buffalo. It's a mess for them to clean up. So more snow in parts of eastern Kentucky, parts of Ohio, central Ohio, in Portsmouth, Chillicothe, Zanesville, and heading up towards Cleveland, Ashtabula, you could also see a foot of snow. But we're looking at 6 to 18 inches in parts of West Virginia and Virginia, right along that border. So again, the wind is going to be something to watch for too. Now, they are calling for a storm max of 40 inches, folks. Nowhere on this chart indicates any snowfall that heavy. So to me, they're being safe by calling 8 to 12 for our region. I'm concerned that this storm could overproduce. We have, now, by the way, we have solar winds expected to hit Earth on January 16th and the 7th. So you're going to get that push, that last cosmic ray push before it sweeps away the cosmic radiation. It could stir things up. It could add to the totals because of space weather affecting Earth. It just depends on where the Earth is facing with this solar storm. Is it going to be right at the same spot where we're getting this big nor'easter here in the Northeast? It's possible. And if it is, then we could see a storm max total somewhere along central New York, western New York. If I had to guess right now, I'd say somewhere around Buffalo is going to get the 40 inches. I hate to be that way, Buffalo, but that's just the truth. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the radar forecast. Here we are, Saturday, kind of calm. Things are setting up high pressure in the northern plains, northwest, and the northeast. Storm system beginning to take shape, though, in the Midwest, across Missouri, Louisiana, all rain in the southern states, and then the snow reaches as far south as northern parts of Mississippi and Alabama. Once again, Georgia, you'll see some of that white stuff, and then boom, here we are, South Carolina, North Carolina. Heavy snow in eastern Kentucky and southeast Ohio. Ice and snow in parts of Virginia into North Carolina before this storm moves through Monday, January 17th. Fastly approaching. Now, this is going to be early morning Monday to late day Tuesday for the storm up here for us. But look at this. Heavy snow for eastern Ohio, most of northwestern Pennsylvania, Erie could see a mix, and Buffalo also could see a mix early. But look what happens by the time we get to sunrise and beyond. Well, there's that energy from the sun enhancing the system. Okay? Heavier snow along the Lake Erie, Lake Ontario border, and I have a feeling that with this storm is going to be pulling winds from the lakes. As the winds are pulling it around, it's going to drag moisture from the lakes and create that typical lake effect heavy snow band as it usually does at this time of year. Now, yes, there is ice that is beginning to form on Lake Erie, but we're still not at a point where this could be just a minor event. This could be the area that we see that 40 inches possible storm max. Again, Buffalo, somewhere around Buffalo, South Towns definitely is in range for this kind of snow totals. And then you see the heavier stuff moving off into Canada. The storm moves through Monday, finally winding down around the early hours of Tuesday morning for New York. Kind of still heavy to go in Maine, mixing in with some rain. And again, by mid-morning Tuesday, that snow you see in western New York, that is going to be lake effect all the way. That's winds wrapping around from the system and pulling the moisture off the lakes. Those finally fade away by Wednesday. And then another system is going to clip the Great Lakes. Michigan, Scott Rose heads up. That's about a 3 to 5 incher. Back into the New York State area, into the Northeast, merging with the system in the South. Not bringing as much snow, but could bring a few more inches just to add the totals in the Northeast. And then by Friday, January 20th, another system trying to get its act together here off the East Coast. High pressure really making another push once again. That means we got plenty of cold air in the atmosphere. By Saturday, January 22nd, we will see that snow system move off to the east. So we dodge a bullet on the 22nd, but then on the 23rd, we see another chance for a potentially big storm to hit the Northeast. Now, this is the 25th. We're about 11 days away. I don't usually put much stock in anything past 6 days on the GFS. Something to watch, though, if this storm starts to track to the west a little bit. And then again, GFS picking up another small system moving across the Great Lakes into the western New York. And you can see the light snow that's falling. That is all lake effect snow. So as long as there's no ice on the lakes, we could see a long-term snow event. Light, but still long-term, multiple days of lake effect snow. And then one more system to come by here in January at the end of the month. And boy, we got to watch that one. And I think this is the one that Starman was alerting me to our friend David Birch over there in the UK. And get best wishes to him. He's up there fighting cancer. What a hell of a warrior he is, folks. Shattered knee, broken femur. They found cancer. Now he's doing chemo. He's in round 2. What a tough son of a bitch. That's all I got to say. But he alerted me that there was a second system coming through in the United States this month. And that one looked to be more dangerous than the first one. So if this 8 to 12 inches is just the light one, then I'm a little worried about the direction of this one. Right now, it's definitely on track. I don't see any high pressure driving down from the Arctic that's going to push this front off into the Atlantic. Again, this is way too far out. But if these models hold up, this looks like this could be a really big storm and definitely dangerous indeed. Could see a major snow event. If we think this one's big, this one could be even bigger. I saw a run for this yesterday. This storm is showing up at the end of the month in both of the runs that I've seen in the last 2 days, and it's getting bigger. So let's hope that this is just a model glitch because it's too far out to really tell anyway, right? Let's take a look at temperatures. How cold are we going to get? Well, if you live up here in the Northeast and the Great Lakes, the Northern Plains, it's going to be cold for a while. More cold air invading the Northeast again midweek next week into the Northern Plains big time by midweek next week. That'll continue for a few days, actually, across the Northern Plains before finally settling over the Great Lakes once again, bringing it back to the Northeast by the 22nd of January. That's my birthday, so it'll be nice and cold. Okay. And cold air trying to retreat back into the Arctic by the 24th of January. But here comes another big burst coming in straight from Canada. And this time it looks like it's really going to affect the Great Lakes and the Northern Plains once again. Also, the northeastern part of the United States. Boy, there's some brutal cold on the way, folks. And it doesn't look like it's leaving anytime soon. January, this is typical for this time of year in this region, but for those of you who do live in the Northeast and in the Great Lakes and the Northern Plains, bundle up, get some long johns, because winter is definitely underway. This is the snow totals by January. This is what they're thinking. About 60 to 70% of the United States will have snow on the ground. 3 inches could be the average for most places. And if you live in the eastern part of the United States, the heavy snow that once was dominating the Northwest has now shifted over to the Midwest, the Great Lakes, and the Northeast, and the East Coast. Look at the totals that are going to rack up in the Appalachian Mountains in Virginia, North Carolina, West Virginia, that whole mountain range. They're going to see some serious snow. Totals could top 60 inches by the end of January in those areas. That's right. They could top close to 60 inches along this ridge right here, folks. Up here in the Northeast, we're going to see a range of anywhere from 10 to 20 inches of snow throughout the Northeast. And, you know, for Ohio, this is not bad for them. 9 inches could be on the ground in Cincinnati. That don't happen. Not in January, not really hardly ever, but here we are. So, winter is getting underway. The cold spots, the Northern Plains, the Great Lakes, the Northeast. I have been telling all of you all year long and last year that we will see the coldest of the cold in these regions. Obviously, right? You're saying, GJ, nice prediction. You're in the north. but we are really starting to see evidence of this Arctic cold settling in, taking place right now. Again, we had a warm October. We had a mild November, and December wasn't all that hateful, but it was colder. Well, here we go. Winter's here, and for those of you who love that, buckle up because you're in for a ride for the rest of this month for sure. And we'll just have to keep our eyes on the situation to see where it goes from here. But the one thing I always said that I was worried about is whenever you see winter start up late, the later it goes, especially for the areas up here in the Northeast, because we know we're going to get snow. That's just, we live in the Northeast. That's goes without saying. But usually when you see a late start in the snowfall, that's also when we see later snowfall in the year, March, possibly early April. So this could be the beginning of a bumpy ride this winter here for folks in the Great Lakes, Northern Plains, and the Northeast as it will continue. Want to say hello to Jesse Vorwald. Hello there, sir. Good to have you. Hello there to my wife, Mari. Glad you are manning the chat. Good to see you, babe. Dorothy Rose, hello. Patricia Clayton, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Knife Collector, as always, thank you, sir. Pam ZZ. Eli in the Wolverine State, sir, one of our frequent commenters on the Patreon channel. Thank you very much for your input. Arnold Schmidt, good to have you over here. Tell Lee I said hello. It's been really busy over here. J-Dog, good to have you in here. I've seen you around a few more times. Valkyrie, 594, good to have you on the channel tonight. Thank you for seeing us. Guys, we can't appreciate the support that we get from you since Google and YouTube have combined the zero ad monetization for content like ours because it goes against the narrative. We've asked folks to support us in other ways. Go to Patreon and just join for $1, or go to our Teespring store and buy a t-shirt. Any way that you guys help is greatly appreciated, and we want to already thank the many donors of this channel who do keep it running. I know the programming's been a little sporadic, but we promise you we are coming up on February 1st, which should be the relaunch of not just Grand Solar Minimum, but the WTF Sky brand itself, the umbrella. Grand Solar Minimum channel, of course, leading the way. And then we're going to have I Love CO2, which is another website on education on CO2. We'll also have a news channel called Middleman Politics. And then on WTF Sky, the mothership network, that's where anything goes. Mari will host several topics, several conversations, and we'll team up a couple times too, hopefully to make you guys laugh as well. But folks, we want to let you know there's big things coming here to the WTF Sky network and the Grand Solar Minimum channel, as well as more content will be kicked off. So again, to all those Patreon people who have continued to put those donations to us, thank you so much for sticking with us. You guys are the reason why we try to make any effort whatsoever to do as much as we can until we know we have the free time to do what we need to do at a full-time pace. All right, once again, thank you for tuning in, guys. That's going to do it for tonight's report. I anticipate a show Sunday night just because of all the weather that we got coming this way, and I'm sure we're going to hear some reports in West Virginia, North Carolina before this hits the Northeast. So anticipate an evening show on Sunday night. We'll probably get that started right around 7:30 as long as the power doesn't go out. All right, guys. Hope everyone has a great evening, and we will talk soon.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.